Let me welcome you to African Motives. Let me welcome to Next Zone African Motives. So today we are going to be on life orientation, grade 11, term 2 revision. So we are going to do section C. Remember that in our previous presentation, we did section A and section B of the very same question paper, which was written in Eastern Cape Province in Amatule East District. So for the paper that you remember very well, that it was written in 23 May 2024. So this is the last part of the very same question paper that we did in our previous presentation. So now we are on section C. So let's quickly go to our question, which is question 4. So here we are on question 4, section C. So this is section C, question 4. So that is that, section C, question 4. So, um, so as follows, as it says, answer 2 questions in this section. So though as we are going to answer them all. So it says your responses must consist of paragraphs. Marks will only be allocated for responses written in full sentences. So that is that. So now let us be on question 4. Question 4, as it says, read the extract below and answer the questions that follows. So the extract is all about the environmental degradation, not only for degradation of nature. So it's environmental degradation, not only degradation of nature. So it says one of the biggest challenges facing humanity is environmental degradation. So the destruction of the world around us, not only physical environments are being destroyed by various industrial farming practice, but it goes hand in hand with social degradation. So environmental degradation increases the vulnerability of the societies and contributes to the shortage of resources. Illness from the population cause financial loss due to the need for medicines and special food and loss of manpower. So now the question now says write paragraphs on the impact of degradation on society and the environment. So that is that. And it says use the following questions as your guidelines. So you're going to use these questions as our guidelines. So that is that. So the first one says define the concept environmental hazard. Define the concept environmental hazards. So we do have our answers on for question same. So here are our answers as we are asked to define the concept environmental hazards. So that is that. As we are asked to define this concept, environmental hazard, it is a substance, state, or event that may threaten the natural environment or human health. Also, it says it is a type of hazard resulting from chemical, biological, or physical agents, either from ongoing or previous human activity, or the hazard may be a property present in the natural environment. So that is that. So what we are trying to say is that the environmental hazard is any substance, like it says, condition or event that can harm natural environment or a human health. So it means that environmental hazards may result from human activities such as pollution, uh, dumping, or it can as well may result from natural conditions such as floods, droughts, or even earthquakes. For example, factories releasing poisonous smoke into the air can cause breathing problems and damage the environment. So that is that when you're talking about this concept, the environmental hazard. So now let us move on to another question which is going to serve as a guideline. It is all about discuss the causes of three main types of pollution. So we are asked to discuss the the three main types of pollution. So here we are on our answers, where we are asked to discuss the causes of three main types of pollution. The first one is a land pollution. Land pollution. So as it says, land pollution is caused by people producing excessive waste, which is dumped in anywhere. So this waste is non-degradable. It's a non-degradable or takes time to break down. So meaning to say, we are saying land pollution happens when waste is dumped on the ground, and this damages soil and environment. So that is that. So what causes that is an excessive dumping of waste everywhere. So excessive dumping of waste everywhere. Also, non-biodegradable materials such as plastics takes long time to decompose. Also, harmful practices such as overuse of pesticides as well as herbicides can as well be the cause. Also, deforestation and poor waste disposal can be the cause of this land pollution. So, hope we understand it. So, also it says unsustainable farming practices, whereby we're talking about the mechanization, use of herbicides and pesticides. So deforestation, deplete and poison the soil and vegetation. Remember, we have talked about that harming farming practice such as overuse of pesticides as well as herbicides. So that is that. People spoil the land we live in by throwing garbage everywhere, by disposing their waste bins everywhere. So that is that when you're talking about poor waste disposal. So hope we understand that. So another causes another causes of the pollution is the air pollution. The air pollution is one of the cause or type of pollution. So it says the air pollution is caused by toxic waste released to the atmosphere as industries release toxins that contaminate the atmosphere. So air pollution occurs when harmful gases and smoke contaminate the atmosphere. So that is that. So it says vehicles release carbon monoxide, which depletes the quality of oxygen that humans inhale. That human inhale. So industries releasing toxic gases into the air. Vehicle so you'll find that the vehicles emissions such as carbon monoxide. So the vehicle emissions such as carbon monoxide is one of the causes of the air pollution. Hope we understand that. The air is polluted through the burning of poisonous substances and their emission to the atmosphere. So the burning of poisonous substances and fossil fuels also causes what? The air pollution. Hope we are still on one page. Let us be on to another question that is going to guide us. So the other one says dumping is increasingly becoming a serious problem in South Africa. Critically evaluate at least three factors that lead to this problem. So here we want the factors leading to dumping in South Africa. So that is that. So sorry, we forget to talk about another type of pollution, that is water pollution. Sorry that we skipped the water pollution. So with water pollution, that is when they spoil our water resources by spilling dangerous substances in our waters. So water pollution happens when harmful substances contaminate rivers, dams, oceans, or other water sources. So that. So it further on says they spoil our water. Already we've talked about that. Okay, they said they spoil our water resources by spilling dangerous substances in our waters, like they've said. We're talking of rivers, dams, like oil spills from ship vessels could contaminate the ocean. So we are talking about the causes now, as we are saying, oil spills from ships also causes that. Also, it says this is caused by chemical or algae, by living organisms, usually from substances such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, which cause sickness and etc. So we are talking about the dumping chemicals into the rivers. So we are talking also about this sewerage. We're talking about sewage, the feces carrying bacteria and viruses. So that is that. Also, industries often dump chemicals in rivers, which are drunk by animals and human beings. So you're talking about industrial waste entering our water sources. Industrial waste entering our water sources. So for example, we talk of factories dumping chemicals into river, causing fish to die and people to become sick. So that is that. So let us go to another question. Let us go to another question. So the other question is the one that we were on it before we can realize that we skipped the other type of pollution. So this is all about whereby we are asked that dumping is increasingly becoming a serious problem in South Africa. Critically evaluate at least three factors that lead to this problem. So now we can go to our answers. Here we are where we are told that dumping is increasingly becoming serious problem in South Africa. So critically, we are to evaluate at least three factors that lead to this problem. So the first one is dumping or throwing papers. Dumping or throwing papers. So are going to throw waste carelessly. People throwing waste carelessly. That is why it says most South Africans do not care about the health of the environment as they dump waste everywhere. As they dump waste everywhere. Many people do not care for the environment. They throw rubbish everywhere. They throw rubbish everywhere. So that is that. So the dump sites are not used properly, as most are not fenced. As most are not fenced and controlled. So some people do not use the dust bins and the waste gets spread all over. So that is the effect that you're going to have, whereby now the waste spreads around communities, whereby you find that the dirty surroundings attract pests and diseases. So that is that. For example, people dumping rubbish next to the roads instead of using dustbins. So that's what you're talking about. Also, another factor can be inefficiencies of local municipalities. Inefficiencies of local municipalities. As it says, municipalities seem lacking in skills to do proper waste management in their area of jurisdiction. So this leads to unnecessary dumping and spoilage of the landscape. So we're talking about inefficiency of local municipality, where we are saying some municipalities fail to manage waste properly due to lack of skills or poor service. So it's because of due to what lack of skills or poor poor service. So the effect that we're talking of refuse is not collected regularly. So that is that. So moreover, municipalities in South Africa cannot control waste disposal as there is a laxity and no recourse. So that is that when you're talking about the inefficiency of a local municipality, where you find illegal dumping that is increasing. So you find that, for example, garbage remaining uncollected for weeks in residential areas. So that is that. Also, another factor can be what the industrialization. Industrialization can be one of the factor that lead to this problem. So, in the industrialization. So, if industrialization, that is when you're saying companies produce and dump waste everywhere. So this dumping of large quantities of waste spoils the environment in a bigger proportions. So meaning to say, industry produce large amounts of waste and sometimes dump it irresponsibly. So that is that. Dump it in responsibly. So moreover, such waste is dangerous to the health of those staying in the precinct of the industry and causes ill health. So that is very dangerous to the health of those staying in the precinct of the industry and causes ill health. So it means that pollution, you know very well that pollution damages the environment. So dangerous waste affects nearby communities. That is what we say is going to be dangerous to the health of those staying in those industry, and that will cause what the ill health. So hope we are together on that. Let us be on to another question. So the other question says, suggest strategies that local municipalities would use to control dumping in community areas. So let us be on that question. So here we are where we are to suggest strategies to local municipalities. What they can do to control dumping in community areas. So municipalities could do any of the following. Could do any of the following. Make enforceable by laws on dumping, which can be implemented easily. So this will help to control dumping at the municipality level. So what we are trying to say, we are saying enforce strict bylaws. Enforce strict bylaws. So municipalities should create rules against illegal dumping, ensure people follow them. For example, people caught dumping illegal should pay heavy fines. So that is that. Also apprehend and prosecute perpetrators. If found guilty, the person will face stiffer punishment. This will stop people from dumping. So that is that. Make sure that you arrest and punish offenders. So make sure that you arrest and punish for offenders. Those found guilty of dumping should face legal consequences. For example, committee members caught dumping waste may be arrested or fined. That is what this point means. Hope you're still on one page. Run a campaign on environmental health. This will educate people and they will know the dangers of dumping. So we are talking about environmental awareness campaigns. Environmental awareness campaigns. Communities should be educated about dangers of dumping. Communities should be educated about the dangers of dumping. For example, schools and community meetings teaching people about recycling and cleanliness. So that is that. Provide adequate reviews, removal services like plastic bags so that people can fill and the trucks will come and collect on a certain day. So here we will provide the reviews removal services. Municipalities should supply enough bins and collect rubbish regularly. For example, providing black refuse bags and weekly waste collection trucks. So that is that. Encourage communities on recycling and reuse. This will reduce the number of dumping material and also helping in keeping the environment clean, and people will save money and make money out of it. So meaning to say, we are saying encourage recycling and reuse. Many people should recycle material instead of throwing them away. For example, collecting cans, bottles, and paper for recycling businesses. So that is all about question 4. So now we are to go to question 5. So here we are on question 5. So we are on question. So question 5, we are to read the article below and answer the questions that follow. The odds could be defined. So as it says, Mpho grew up in a very poor family where food was scarce commodity. She often went to bed hungry. Mpho soon realized that it would take hard work and determination to change her circumstances. Education was the key to her success. And even though she had to run to school each day, almost 10 kilometers away from her home, Mpho knew she had to persevere. So the grim reality of going to bed hungry, not having shoes to walk the distance to school each day, only drove Mpho to strive for better education. I wanted more, and a family friend who was studying told me that I had to work harder than an average person to get where I wanted to be. She says that these are the words of Mpho. These are the words of Mpho. As a result, Mpho spent most nights studying by candlelight and many afternoons in the library so that she would achieve good results. For many youths in the rural areas, a metric certificate symbolizes access to work. But Mpho wanted even more. Her plan was to go to university, a venture that no one in her immediate family had ever undertaken. After matriculating in 2013, with no money, Mpho then applied and was granted an NSFAS, which enabled her to study for the degree of her dream. At the age of 19, she graduated as a chartered accountant. In this way, Mpho managed to change her situation for better life. So this is our article. So as you have read this article together, so now we are to answer the questions together. So now let's hear what question wants from us. The question says, write paragraphs on research, the requirements for admission to additional higher education courses. Use the following questions as your guidelines. Use the following questions as your guideline. What is NSFAS? What is NSFAS? So now let us go to our answers for that. Question 5. What is NSFAS? NSFAS is a national student financial aid scheme. It's a government study loan for students who come from poor families who are willing to pursue their studies at institution of higher learning. Remember, Paul got what? NSFAS after the matric. So now we know what NSFAS it is, National Student Financial Aid Scheme. So as you are told, that is a government study loan. So as we have said that, so it means a learner who cannot afford university fees may receive NSFAS funding like Mpho. So like Mpho, she received that because she was from poor family. She cannot afford those fees of the university. So that is that. So now let us go to the second question and see what it wants us to do. So the second question says, discuss 3 characteristics that made Mpho to succeed. So we were asked to discuss 3 characteristics that made Mpho to succeed. That is that. So let us be on our answers. So we know the question is all about the characteristics that makes Mpho to succeed. So she shows persistence and perseverance despite the challenges she faces. So Mpo continued working hard despite facing difficulties. Remember, she was from poor family. She had to walk 10 kilometers to school. So, but she shows persistence, and that perseverance was there for her. So that is what Mpo did. So she kept studying even when her family struggled financially. So that is that. She was motivated to succeed, and both of her goals were realistic and achievable. So, motivation and goal setting of Mpo. She had realistic goals and stayed focused on achieving them. Her goal was to pass grade 11 and attend university, and she did exactly like that. So she achieved her dreams. She achieved her goals. She was able to realize her dreams. She worked hard to overcome her challenges. Hard work and determination that pursued. She sacrificed social activities and focused on education. She spent more time studying than attending parties. You see that she spent nights, sleepless nights, trying to study so that she can achieve her goal. She was determined to change her family situations. So Mpo was determined to change her family situations so that she can help her family in future. She was open and constructive advice. Show openness to advice. She accepted constructive advice from others. You know, she was advised to study. If you can remember there on our article that she was advised that she must study very hard. So that is that. She sacrificed the social environment activities to focus on her studies. So that is that. So now let us go to other questions. The other question says, assess what made Mpo qualify for financial aid from NSFAS. So let us be on our answers. What made Mpo qualify for financial aid from NSFAS? She comes from poor family, and the family's financial position is one of the determining the criterion for qualification. Poor financial background. So NSFAS assists students whose families cannot afford tertiary education. That is the reason why she qualified to get that support, that bursary. So that is that. Because you know for very well that her parents did not have enough money to pay university fee. Also, what made Mpoto qualify is because of good performance at grade 12 makes one to be recommended for financial aids, as NSFAS requires a proven record of performance at grade 12 on our onwards. So here we are talking about good academic performance. Students with strong grade 12 results are more likely to qualify like Mpo did. So Mpo passed well in grade 12. So that's why she qualified. She performed well with quality results but did not have money to further her studies. So that is that. Also, she provided the relevant documentation required to prove that her parents, guardians cannot afford to pay for her studies. Proof of financial need. She submitted documents proving her family's financial struggles. So she submitted parents' income statements to NSFAS. So hope we are together on that. So that is that. These the questions from these are our questions. The other question says, recommend two possible higher education institutions funding options which Mpo would consider for tertiary funding, excluding NSFAS. So meaning here we are talking about other funding options beside NSFAS. Other funding options beside NSFAS. So that is what is needed from us, other funding options beside NSFAS. So the other funding beside NSFAS, we can talk of bursaries. We can talk of, for that question, you can talk of bursaries. Bursaries are financial awards given to the saving students. Usually do not need repayment. So for example, a money company paying for students to study engineering. We can talk of study loans, whereby money is borrowed from bank or institution that must be repaid later. For example, a student loan from bank for university fees. Or we can talk of scholarships, financial support given to students with excellent academic or sporting performance. A top performing learner receiving university scholarship. Also, we can talk of learnership, a program where a person works and studies at the same time while earning stipend. For example, a learner working at a company while completing qualification. So those are other funding options beside NSFAS. So this is what the questions, this question wants. So like I've said, it can be bursary, it can be a study loan, it can be scholarships, it can be learnerships. So that is all about question 5. And then we are to attend to question 6. So we are to attend to question 6. So question 6 says, read the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Social and cultural views that influence and affect relationships. As it says, relationships are associations with other people. So a person's well-being is affected by the relationship. Some relationships can be detrimental or damaging to well-being, while other relationships are good and constructive. Good relationships are built by good values and attitudes. So the society and culture have a great influence on relationships. As a result, different types of relationships will constantly be affected by norms of one's culture and society. So in today's world, technology stands out as one of the leading influences on relationships. So that is the extract that you have just read. So now we are to answer the questions. Write in paragraph factors that contribute to relationships that are detrimental to well-being. Use the following as guidelines. Define the term social media and give one example of social media platform. So like these other ones, we are having our answers. We are having our answers. So as we are asked to define the social media and we have to give one example of social media platform, it says the definition of social media is a computer-based technology that facilitates the sharing of ideas, thoughts, and information through the building of virtual networks and communities. So we are saying social media is a technology that allows people to communicate, share ideas, information, photos, videos through online platforms. Through online platforms. So that is that when you're talking about what a social media. So websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social network. Also, we're talking about websites and computer programs that allow people to communicate and share information on the internet using computer or mobile phones. And the examples of social media, that's when you can talk of Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube. Um, you can even talk of what Twitter, that is that. So let us be on to another question. Explain 2 ways how the detrimental relationships can negatively impact on youth's life. So we are to attend to that, where we are to explain 2 ways how detrimental relationships can negatively impact on youth's life. So we are on our answers. Here we are on our answers. So we are here on our answers is we are saying we were busy on trying to find out the ways and how detrimental relationships can negatively impact on use life. So, like I've said, here are our answers. Relationships can be detrimental if parents or relatives are abusive, which can make one to be disrespectful to adults. So, abuse by parents or relatives. So, abuse treatment can affect a child emotionally and socially. So, that is that. Also, it says when the schoolmates bully one another, which may instigate fights within the school, within the school. So that is that. Also, when one is ridiculed or dispersed by peers or caregivers, to an extent that when he or she develops a low self-esteem, a low self-esteem. So when the caregivers or parents do not provide basic necessities such as food, clothes, and shelter, which will make one to be lonely, to stay in isolation. So that is um, how detrimental relationships negatively impact youth. Abuse by by parents is the first one, where we are saying um, abusive treatment can affect child emotionally and socially. Then also being bullied by schoolmates. Being bullied by schoolmates, as we have seen that this one, it says, when the schoolmates bully one another. So that is when bullying creates fear and stress and unhappiness. So effect on that is that learners may avoid school because they are bullied by one another. Fighting and conflict, they are going to increase. That is, for example, a learner teased daily about appearance, losing confidence now. Also, it talks about when one is ridiculed or despised by peers or caregivers. That is when you're talking about ridicule on or and rejection. That is being mocked by peers. That is where you are being mocked by peers, and that lowers self-esteem. So feelings of loneliness and depression. For example, a teenager excluded from friendship groups, becoming isolated. So that is that. Or when the caregiver or parents do not provide basic necessities such as food, clothes, shelter, which will make one to be lonely, to stay in isolation. So we are talking about the lack of basic needs. That is when caregivers fail to provide food, shelter, clothing, you feel neglected. So the effects of that is that the social isolation, poor emotional development. For example, a learner without proper school clothes, avoiding social interaction. So that is that. So now let us be on to another question. So the other question says, examine 3 ways in which social media can save the youth from detrimental relationship. So let us answer that question. So that is that. 3 ways in which social media can save the youth from detrimental relationships. So it says they can get information that save them from abusive as well as trafficking by reading from social media. So that is that, how social media can protect youth from detrimental relationships. Access to helpful information. The first statement talks about access to helpful information. Youth can learn about abuse, trafficking, and safety online. For example, watching educational videos about gender-based violence. That is that. Also, they can tweet and ask questions which they may be shy to ask face to face, and then get help they need from others, meaning asking questions online. So young people may feel more comfortable asking for help online. For example, a teenager using anonymous chats to ask for advice about bullying. So that is that. Also, they can get tips of reporting abusive and criminal acts on social media. So reporting abuse and crime. So social media provides information about reporting dangerous situations. For example, learning emergency hotline numbers through social media campaigns. So that is that. They can learn tricks that robbers use and prevent being victims by social media. So that is when they learn safety tips. So you can learn how criminals operate, how to stay safe. For example, social media posts warning people about online scams. So that is that. So now let us go to the last question. which says critically evaluate dangers of engaging in social media relationships. So that is that. So here we are where we are to evaluate dangers of engaging social media relationships. So the first one says social media has created destructive relationships from moral values. From moral values. So dangers of social media relationship, destruction of moral values. So some online relationships encourage bad behavior. For example, friends influencing others to post inappropriate content online. So that is that. The use of social media has led to conflict situations in which deceit and the lack of trustworthiness is present. So dishonesty and lack of trust. People may lie about their identity online. For example, someone pretending to be another person to scam others. So that is that. Also, isolation is very common because there is no personal face-to-face contact, communication. So that is that. Too much online interaction reduces face-to-face communication. Example, learners spending all day online, avoiding family interaction. So that is that. There is evidence of loss of inhibitions, which results in one sentence that will be regretted, as it could be insulting and hurtful to the other person. So loss of inhibitions, meaning to say people may post hateful things online without thinking, posting insulting comments during arguments. So that is that. Social media can impact on real life situations by tarnishing one's reputation, by posting private personal information. So damage reputation. Private information online can embarrass people. For example, posting someone's private photos without permission. Once one can be in danger of human trafficking by relating with strangers. So that is that when you're talking about human trafficking and stranger danger. So it means criminals sometimes use social media to target a vulnerable youth. For example, stranger online pretending to offer a job opportunity just to lure the victims. So this is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your time. Please make sure that you share with others, and please don't forget to hit the subscription button. I thank you.